Nā hao I whā, nā iwi I taunei, tēnā koutou katoa. To the people of the Four Winds and all of you gathered here today, greetings from New Zealand. Now there are two key things that you need to know about New Zealand. Firstly, our waste levy is only $10 per tonne. So we don't have a lot of money to play with when we're trying to reduce our waste. Secondly, you've probably all heard that theory about 6 degrees of separation. Well, in New Zealand, try 3. We've only got 67 city and district councils, so everyone more or less knows everyone else. So in the spirit of feeling like you're a New Zealander today, I'd just like you all to turn around and say hello to someone that you don't know. So we all kind of feel like we've got that 3 degrees of separation. So today I want to share with you some lessons from our experience of running the Love Food Hate Waste campaign in New Zealand that can apply to pretty much any behaviour change campaign or project that you're working on. So number one, obviously, if you don't succeed the first time, try again. So Love Food Hate Waste is actually a council-initiated campaign, not a government-initiated campaign. And it's got 61 out of the 67 councils in New Zealand choosing to work together. So originally, the Wellington region, which is made up of 8 councils, applied to the central government for funding to run a food waste reduction campaign, and the central government turned them down. And they said, we'll only consider funding something if it's a national campaign. Now, I don't know about you, but that sounded like a pretty big ask to me. So the Wellington City Council didn't want to not do something, so they approached us at WasteMINZ and said, hey, you're our national body, you're in charge of coordinating things nationally. Can you help us to try and get the rest of the country on board? So we're like, okay, we'll give it a go. So second lesson, don't expect everyone to get your vision straight away. We began with 10 people who are our members who volunteered their time to say, yeah, let's have a look and see if this project's got some bones to it. They did a bit of research and they thought, well, the first thing we need is some good data. So we did a bit of a call out to all our councils and we said, how many of you would like to be involved in a project where we're going to collect some data about food waste? And 20 councils said yes. And they donated their staff's time and sat down and planned and did some research about what kind of research we needed to do. And then we did another call out and said, right, we know what kind of research we'd like to do. Who'd like to help pay for it? And surprisingly, we had 42 councils who said, yes, we're happy to pay for it. Now, what you need to know is because this is a voluntary thing, it's all done by a head of population. So Auckland Council pays for a huge amount and then everyone else pays for much smaller increments from then on. So we did the research and we showed that New Zealand did have a food waste problem and that there was something that we could do about it. And then we made an application for government funding. And by that time, we had 52 councils on board who said to the government, hey, we all want to work together and reduce food waste. And then once the campaign was up and running, we had another 3 come on board who were like, oh, now that we can actually see what you're doing. So we've now got 91% of our councils participating. So if you're building or developing a program, it's really important that you give people multiple opportunities to say yes and take part. Because not necessarily everyone's going to jump on board at the beginning, but if you keep giving them opportunities to join in at varying stages, by the end you might be surprised how many people you have participating. But lesson number 3 is, you will never get everyone participating if your scheme is voluntary. One of our councils who doesn't participate has 600 people living there. That's the Chatham Islands. So we figured that we'd throw them a freebie and just kind of let them join in. We had another council who didn't want to participate, but their community recycling network were really, really keen. So we said, well, look, that's okay. We'll charge you $100 a year to join in and take part. They did such a great job of doing the activities in their local area that eventually their council was like, oh yeah, we probably better join officially because they're doing such a good job. So we refunded that community group their $100 because we thought that was only fair. So don't ever let the prospect of free riders stop you from implementing something that's really going to benefit you and your community. Because for the sake of kind of 6 councils, it didn't make sense that the rest of the country didn't do it. So I think we probably all know how important it is to get good waste data and how expensive it is to get it. So when we began our project, we had no idea how much food waste was generated in New Zealand, what the source of food waste was and what it was costing us. There was a number widely quoted in the media, and when we looked to see how the research was done, an Australian company had asked 250 New Zealand households to guess how much food they wasted. So we were kind of like, well, that doesn't sound like a really robust methodology to kind of base our campaign on. So we went into 1,365 rubbish bins, me personally, not all of them, but at least a day, and we pulled all the food out and we weighed it and we sorted it and we costed it, so we knew exactly what was wasted. We did an online survey of 1,000 people asking them about their attitudes and behaviours and perceptions of food waste. We got 100 people to keep a kitchen diary where for a week they recorded down everything they threw away, where it was stored and why they'd thrown it away, and we did some in-depth interviews. Now, all up, it cost us $210,000 to collect that information, and it enabled us to get $400,000 from the central government. Now, I was very envious when I heard the previous speaker, because she had $400,000, it sounded like a year. We've got $400,000 for the whole country for 3 years. So I was like, I'm working in the wrong country. But the point of getting that really, really good data is that we knew exactly who our audiences were that we needed to target. We knew what behaviours we needed to change and what messages were going to resonate. So it meant that we could use our money really, really effectively. So it's great to get really good data, and I'm sure all of you out there probably have really good data, but what's really important is to tell a story with your data. So as a result of all our research, we can tell you that the number one food wasted in New Zealand is bread. We throw out 20 million loaves of bread every year. That's just households uneaten. We know that children don't eat their crusts, and I don't know if you have this in Australia, but in New Zealand we have ladies who lunch, and they don't like crusts on their club sandwiches, so they won't eat them if the crusts are on there. And we know that despite everyone on the internet telling you to store your bread in the pantry, that they are wrong. And that in New Zealand, we have such a humid climate that bread will go mouldy in the pantry far faster than it goes stale in the fridge. And we know that because we did the research. But then you need to tell a story with all that data, because you kind of look at those numbers and it's like, how am I going to turn that into a story? So I personally went and spent 3 days when we were sorting through the rubbish bins, and I pulled out all the really good looking food that people were throwing away. And then we hired a professional photographer to come and take photos of the food that would be magazine and newspaper worthy. So this is the bread that we found in people's rubbish bins. And so when we show that photo to people, people are like, oh my goodness, because I think people have this idea that food waste is peelings and scraps and odd and ends and little gunky bits and things that have absolutely no value. But when we show people pictures of food like this and say, I was there and I pulled that out of someone's rubbish bin, they're like, oh my goodness, that's not my perception of food waste. Now, obviously, even with the local and government funding we got, we didn't have a huge budget, so we haven't been able to kind of pay ad agencies and get kind of expertise. But because we had really good data and we had really great photos, we were able to go to the media and basically get amazing media coverage on TV and newspapers, because people were kind of like, oh, that's a shock. This is how much it's costing us as a country, $870 million. 3 shopping trolleys worth of food every year is what the average household throws into the rubbish bin. And that's what the food looks like. And so people were kind of like, oh my goodness, this is an issue, this is a problem. We need to do something about it. So my next really useful lesson, I think, is stealing other people's good ideas. Now, I don't mean literally steal, obviously, but no matter what waste issue you're trying to work with, someone else in the world is probably doing the same thing. So finding out what's worked well in other parts of the world and then adapting it is a really good strategy. Now, I have to say, we do always ask permission when we do steal other people's ideas. So this is a community fridge that we set up. It's open 24 hours a day, and it's in Auckland's central business district. People can come and donate their excess or unwanted food, and we also have volunteers who go to local supermarkets and collect the food that they were going to throw away, and then anyone can come and help themselves and open it up. Now, we did this purely as a media stunt for 3 weeks. We got fabulous TV coverage, fabulous newspaper coverage, but then the public was like, well, we don't just want it here for 3 weeks, we want it here permanently. So a group of volunteers formed themselves, and a year and a half later, it's still going strong. And we've got 6 more fridges that have been set up around the country just by members of the public. Because we took all the information that we had used to start our fridge and we made it publicly online. And so whenever anyone contacted us and said, oh, how do we set up a fridge? We're like, well, here are the documents, download them, and if you need some advice, we can help you, but it's pretty easy to do. We stole this idea from a town in Spain, so I had to bring up my rusty Spanish as I wrote them a little email saying, hey, love your fridge, can we copy the idea, and how did you go about doing it? Hopefully you'll have all seen these lovely videos up the top from Sustainability Victoria. So they've made these really great videos with some ideas on how to use food and different recipes, and we loved their videos. So we thought, well, look, let's make some of our own. That's a really good idea. But we made sure that the videos and the topics in our videos were different topics to Sustainability Victoria, so that we could share their videos and then they could share ours. So we wanted to add to that kind of global suite of videos so that we weren't kind of duplicating resources. This picture here on the left actually is from the Australian celebrity chef, Sarah Wilson. We followed her on Twitter and we thought, that's really good, we really like that idea. And because we had this really good data, we knew that 2,500 tonnes of broccoli stalks, not broccoli, but broccoli stalks are thrown away in New Zealand every year because people just don't realise that they're edible. Or if they are edible, well, how do you eat them so that they taste delicious? So we did our slightly controversial campaign called Be a Stalker, Be a Broccoli Stalker, and got really fantastic engagement from the public. So if anyone here does not know how to eat their broccoli stalks, come to me. We've got some really great recipes for how you can use them up. And that's kind of like a really simple thing because, people are throwing away something because they just didn't realise that you could eat it. Once they know how to eat it, they try it. Once they like it, kind of the problem's solved. So tackling very specific strategies, because you've got really good data, means you can really kind of hone in on those things. Because who would have ever thought that broccoli stalks would be something that we should even worry about? But 2,500 tonnes of them, yeah, it's worthwhile doing some campaigning. Now, I think you remember that I said that bread is our most wasted food in New Zealand. So 20 million loaves a year are thrown out just by families. So we wanted to raise awareness of just how much bread was wasted. So we'd seen this event done online in Austria, which is an Arc de Triomphe of bread. We thought, oh, that looks pretty cool. But all that bread obviously would have been wasted because kind of what do you do once it's in this thing? We don't like to waste any food as part of our campaigning. So we decided, well, look, why don't we'll make a pyramid. We don't want to make an Arc de Triomphe, we're going to make a pyramid out of bread. Out of 2,453 loaves of bread, because that's how much bread we throw away every hour in New Zealand into our rubbish bins. Every hour, someone said, every hour. So it's kind of a staggering amount. All those crusts, just so that you know, crusts and bread ends make up 40% of a loaf of bread. So if your children don't eat their crusts, that's 40% of the loaf of bread by weight that gets thrown away. So, and we were like, okay, well, we're going to build a pyramid. Why don't we do that live on breakfast television? Because, even if it collapses, it would make kind of for really good television. And we'll do it down in Christchurch because, they do have earthquakes down there. So that's the place where you want to build a pyramid. And we did it on a university campus and we got a whole lot of engineering students and they kind of spent 2 months doing all the maths to make sure that all the levels and it wouldn't wobble and things like that. And so we had this pyramid up in the university for kind of 4 or 5 hours and then we dismantled it and we gave away some bread to the students. And then we went to low-income families and low-income schools in Christchurch and we gave everyone a loaf of bread. And on that bread, we sellotaped a recipe card for a really simple meal that a child could make in a microwave using their crusts. And then on the back, we gave them storage advice on how to store their bread so it didn't go off. So something kind of, really fun, really different. Didn't cost us a huge amount of money. The supermarket donated all the bread because they got some good coverage out of it as well. But it really kind of, captured people's attention, particularly where there was that slight wobble on TV where you're thinking, is the pyramid going to collapse or not? I'm just going to see, how am I doing? Okay, 4 more minutes. I don't have a slide of this because it's very recent, but now's the opportunity to whip out your phone and look up lovefoodhatewaste.co.nz. One of the most recent projects we've been involved with is, I'm sure you all know that meal planning is a great way to reduce your waste. And we've got things like in New Zealand called My Food Bag. All those services where if you've got lots of money, you order in the food and, that gives you the recipe and you kind of work out what to do. And we were like, well, that's great, but what do you do if you can't afford it? Because in New Zealand, it averages about $30 a meal for those food ordering services, and it's really expensive. So we've just recently devised a 4-week meal planner And it's $60, and it feeds a family of 6 for 5 dinners. And basically, it's zero waste. By the end of the week, you will have no food left that you haven't used up. So I suppose my final lesson, and it's kind of like, I think almost been one of the themes that's run through this year's conference here, is collaboration is key. And one of the main lessons I've personally learnt from this campaign is about the power and importance of collaboration. When we first started out with the Love Food Hate Waste campaign, we knew that we knew nothing about food waste. So basically we got onto the phone to everyone in the world and said, hey, we're from New Zealand and we want to do a food waste campaign, and can you tell us what's worked for you and what hasn't worked for you, and is there anything that you wouldn't do again or that you would regret? And we had this fabulous response of everyone kind of sharing their information and their learnings and kind of giving us some encouragement. And so regularly now, 4 times a year, we meet up at really odd hours of the day and night with our colleagues from New South Wales EPA, Sustainability Victoria, Zero Waste Scotland, RAP, Metro Vancouver, and the City of Brisbane. And we share our ideas, and we talk about what's worked well, what hasn't worked well, and we're like, oh, can I steal that? Can I use that? Can I adapt that for my own country? So if I can leave you all with one key message from our experience, it would be, don't reinvent the wheel, and don't go it alone. Look for opportunities to work and collaborate with others and learn from others. You'll save yourself money, you'll save yourself time, you can avoid the mistakes they've made, which is really, really useful, makes you look really good, and you'll probably make a whole lot of new friends along the way. So regardless of what waste issue you're dealing with, we over here in New Zealand at WasteMINZ are always happy to talk waste, to share what we've learnt, and look for opportunities to work together. Thank you.